Hello and welcome to Complexity Limits Guide for the Heroic Stone Legion Generals Encounter, written and produced by Crzypck in coordination with Complexity Limit. Presented by Herman Miller. Stone Legion Generals is a 3-phase encounter with an intermission occurring after both phases 1 and 2. You'll be fighting General Kahl and General Grzypck. In phase 1, you'll fight Kahl by herself. In phase 2, you'll fight Grzypck by himself. And in phase 3, you'll fight them together. There's also a few adds for you to deal with over the course of the fight. There's 2 primary mechanics you'll be dealing with for the entirety of the encounter, both of which are quite impactful and must be dealt with properly. Kahl casts Wicked Blade, which will mark 2 people and then throw a red glaive at them that goes from her to the first target, bounces to the second, and then back to her. Anybody hit by this glaive during this path takes a chunk of damage and gains 1 stack of Wicked Laceration, a permanent dot. Grzypck casts Stonebreaker's combo, which is 2 abilities cast back to back. The first part of this is Crystallize, a 5-second cast at a random player. The target will have a circle around them. After 5 seconds, the circle explodes, dealing mild damage to anybody hit and stunning them for 4 seconds. This also removes any bleeds from the player's hit. The second part of the combo is Pulverizing Meteor, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a giant meteor that comes from the sky and smashes in the same spot as Crystallize, dealing massive damage split between everybody hit. To deal with the Wicked Blade, you'll want raid markers on the ground for the affected players to run to. The rest of the raid should ensure they are not standing between the boss and those markers. For Stonebreaker's combo, the Crystallized target should move just slightly outside melee range. Anybody who needs bleeds removed needs to go and stand in the circle for the explosion. You'll then want several additional people to help soak the meteor so nobody dies. Now, let's get into the phases. In phase 1, you'll be fighting Kahl by herself. Pull her back towards the back of the room, with your markers for Wicked Blades set up off to the side. You should be loosely spread, but in close proximity to the boss. Do not stand between her and the Wicked Blade markers. Kahl will cast Serrated Swipe at the tank, dealing a chunk of damage and applying a permanent bleed called Serrated Tear. Swap when Crystallize is cast. She'll also cast Heartrend, which puts a 36-second relatively weak dot on several players. This can be dispelled. When Heartrend is removed from a player, whether it expires or is dispelled, it'll then be replaced with Heart Hemorrhage, an amped up version for 6 seconds that ticks really hard. Healers need to pay attention to the players with Heartrend and make sure you keep them up through Heart Hemorrhage. About 10 seconds into the fight, and then about every 30 seconds later, you'll get an ad called the Stone Legion Goliath. This will periodically cast Ravenous Hunger on itself, increasing its damage by 75%. It'll also cast Ravenous Feast upon reaching 100 energy, causing it to jump at a random player, stunning them, and then doing a Blade Flurry type ability at them. This just needs to be healed through. You should tank the Goliaths on top of Kahl and cleave them down. When they reach 20% health, a Goliath will turn into a Soul Taint Effigy and apply a stack of the Soul Taint debuff to everybody in the raid every second. This debuff reduces your healing received by 10% per stack. The debuff is removed when the Goliath dies. As such, all DPS should hard swap whenever a Goliath reaches 20% health. Whenever Crystallize is cast, all players with bleeds, including the tank with Serrated Tear stacks, should stand in the circle. You'll want an additional 2 to 3 people to stand in the meteor circle so nobody dies. Keep this up until Kahl reaches 50% health, at which point you'll enter the intermission. In the intermission, the boss will take 95% reduced damage. Goliaths will continue spawning, and all mechanics continue occurring. You'll notice Prince Renathal at the very back of the room, chained to the ground with a red circle around him. To exit the intermission, you need to restore his anima bar to full. This is accomplished by running orbs of red anima to him. The orbs are dropped by adds dying. Goliaths will drop a giant orb when they die, which restores 30% anima to Renathal. The orb lasts 15 seconds on the ground, and it can be picked up by running over it. It'll give you a 16-second debuff, in which time you can bring the orb over to Renathal. Additionally, there's some smaller adds that'll be flying around the room during the intermission. When they die, they'll drop smaller anima orbs worth 10% of Renathal's anima bar. They'll also be dropping swirlies on the floor, make sure you don't stand in the swirlies. The whole raid should help run anima to Renathal until he reaches 100 energy. At that point, he'll cause an anima explosion, knocking everybody in the raid back and causing Kahl to fly away, starting phase 2. As a note, it's really easy to get knocked off the platform by this if you aren't careful. We found that off to the side, there's a gate that runs along the platform's edge. If you get knocked back into the gate, you don't get knocked off. At the beginning of Phase 2, Grzypck will land and start attacking you. Position him off to the side near the entrance of the room. Call will now be flying around the area, but continue casting Wicked Blade. You'll need the players targeted by this to get out of the group, and for everybody else to adjust and make sure that they are not accidentally clipped by the blade. Grzypck continues casting Crystallize and Meteor, but gains a couple new abilities. Stone Fist is a tank smack, dealing heavy damage and knocking the tank back. This also applies a debuff that'll cause you to take increased damage from subsequent Stone Fists for 40 seconds. You'll need to taunt every 1 to 2 stacks, preferably every stack if you can. Seismic Upheaval will cause a series of swirlies to start appearing under everybody's feet. Keep moving, don't stand in the swirlies or you'll take a big chunk of damage. Grzypck's last ability is Reverberating Eruption, which will mark a random player and then send a shockwave at them. This deals moderate damage and will leave a puddle on the ground. Starting with the boss's second cast of Eruption, all existing puddles will explode during the Reverberating Eruption cast and need to be soaked. Failure to soak an existing puddle's explosion causes the raid to take a large chunk of damage. Taking damage from either the Reverberating Eruption itself or soaking one of the puddle explosions causes you to take 500% increased damage from either of those effects for 45 seconds. You'll want to drop these puddles close together along the side of the room that you're near, making it easier to soak them later on. As a note, there's actually a cap of 3 puddles in existence at a time. Starting with the 4th puddle, the oldest puddle will despawn after its explosion. In addition to all of this, the Goliath adds will spawn throughout this phase. You'll need to work through and deal with these mechanics until Grzypck reaches 50% health, at which point you'll re-enter the intermission and once again need to feed Renathal Anima. This works exactly as it did before. Once you've filled his Anima bar again, he'll explode, do another knockback, and push you into Phase 3. At that point, Call will land, and you'll now be fighting both Grzypck and Call together for the rest of the encounter. In Phase 3, Goliaths will not spawn anymore. Call retains all of her Phase 1 abilities, Grzypck retains all of his Phase 2 abilities. You should use Bloodlust as soon as you enter Phase 3. You'll want to use the same positioning as you did in Phase 1 with the bosses stacked on top of each other. Do not get hit by swirlies from Seismic Upheaval. You'll want to drop the eruption puddles along the outsides, soak the old puddles when they explode, make sure healers are focusing people with Heartrend, tanks swap after every cast of Stone Fist, move to the markers when you have Wicked Blade, and stack and Crystallize if you have stacks of bleeds. Keep handling all of the abilities exactly like you have been, and nuke the bosses. You'll want to try to keep their health pools as close as you can, because when one boss dies, the other starts dealing 200% increased damage. You want ideally for them to die at the same time. Take these 2 down, get your amped up higher item level purples, and let's go take down Denathrius. Let's go kill Denathrius. Thanks for checking out our video. Now that you know how to kill the boss, be sure to like the video and subscribe to our channel for the rest of our guides, kill videos, and a whole lot more.